Hello and welcome to week 4 of the Bridge program. It was nice to see everyone last week. I'm sorry that the My Math Lab technology did not work quite yet, but one of our goals for the Bridge is to try to get some of the technology working to where in the summer when it's time to start your credit courses, you're not going to have any trouble. You'll be able to just log on and everything's going to work seamlessly. So we were able to get D2L up and running. Mr. Fish sent a message that said that he received some of your assignments in your Dropbox, so that was good. And in math, you're really not going to find much in the D2L at this point, but that's really my goal by next week to get a lot more in D2L so that way you'll be even more familiar with it. But the email is working, and I believe there's one assignment in there right now, but don't worry about that. For now, we're just going to look at the CEI workbook, try to finish up the arithmetic portion of the CEI workbook. We won't be able to cover every topic between now and the end of the Bridge program that's in that workbook, but that was never really the intention. You will be covering these topics as you go along in some of your other classes, so as long as we can get the basics in there, that's really our goal. Alright, so tonight we're going to just look at fraction, decimal, and percent conversion for a few minutes, and then focus on the rest of the percent portion of the curriculum, and then we'll move on to integers this week. So I'm going to minimize this so that you can have a larger space for the problems. Okay, so if you'll recall, last week we got this packet and you were supposed to just read through it and then look at the CEI workbook pages 16 and 17 and make sure that you're okay with those conversions. So this little packet had just some examples of each type of conversion, fractions, decimals, and percents. And then if you look at the back page, that was basically just one sheet altogether with all the different conversions and an example of each. Okay, then hopefully you're okay with workbooks page 16 and 17. And what we're going to do is just look at the workbook. So if you want to have your workbook out, your CEI workbook, we're going to look really starting at page 19 of that workbook, and I'm just going to pick a few problems that are percent problems. These are ones that are different than what we looked at last week, or maybe we didn't really get to that. So thought we'd just practice a few of these just to sort of get you started on this section. Okay, so again, I'm on page 19 of the CEI workbook. And what we're going to do is we're going to start by looking at number 2. Let's start by getting a better pen. Okay, number 2. So let's try that one. And we're going to set it up using the proportion that we were looking at last week, and it was is over of equals percent over 100. So this was listed in your packet that you had for last week. Now, really, you don't have to use this. There are multiple ways to work these problems, but this is just one way that found that people tend to be able to remember because you can work 3 different types of problems using this one proportion. So let's try number 2. If 29% of Jermaine's $2,200 paycheck is withheld for taxes and insurance, how much money is withheld for taxes and insurance? So how much of Jermaine's paycheck is withheld for taxes and insurance? Okay. So when we're going to do it this way, is over of equals percent over 100. If you want to do that, then there's some things you need to know about the proportion. First off, the 100 is just there. Okay, that doesn't change. And what that does is that keeps you from having to move your decimal point back and forth, multiplying by 100 or dividing by 100, as you did when you were doing the conversions. Having this 100 here sort of takes care of that, having to convert. Now the percent is going to go in that numerator. So 29% goes here, and you can just drop the percent symbol. Again, you don't have to change this to a decimal. That's what 29 over 100 is, 0.29. So that would effectively, if you did it a different way, would change it to a decimal. So if 29% of Jermaine's $2,200 paycheck is withheld, how much is withheld? So basically the question here is, what is 29% of 2,200? That's what you're really asking. What is 29% of 2,200? So that's where we get the is and the of. The is word and the of word. Well, of 2,200. So 2,200 is our of word. That goes in that denominator. And what number is? I don't know what number is. That's what I'm trying to find out. That's my variable. So I'm just going to call it x. I don't know the answer. That's what I'm trying to figure out. So if you can get that, then the great news about doing it this way is you just work it the same way every time. It's what we call a proportion. One fraction equal to another fraction. So we simply cross multiply and we'll have our answer. And you can use a calculator for this section today with the percent. The numbers are going to get, you're not going to want to do all that multiplication and division. So it's fine just to use a calculator here to do the multiplication and division. So we would have 100x equals 29 times 2,200. We've been trying to keep our numbers low so that you could do it without a calculator, but this is not going to be that way. So 100x equals 63,800. Now, the way that you get x by itself, since it's multiplied by 100, to get rid of that 100, you just divide both sides by 100. So I'm going to divide both sides by 100, which effectively is moving a decimal point. And you would get x is 638. So the question is, how much money is withheld for taxes and insurance? So $638 is withheld. That would be your answer. And make sure that makes sense, okay? His paycheck is $2,200. And this is, 29%. You can estimate that. That's not quite 30%, not quite a third, would be 33%. So, if you were kind of to divide that by 3 in your head, this seems like a reasonable answer, okay? Now, if you got that, something higher than 2,200 was withheld, how is that even possible? He made 2,200. They couldn't withhold more taxes than he made in the paycheck, So just check to make sure the answers make sense. Okay, let's skip down to number 4. We're going to do it the same way. Is over of equals percent over 100. But this time we're going to have our 3 out of 4 things that we know, or maybe in different spots. So the Marble Slab Creamery made 32 pounds of fudge for a weekend festival. During the festival, 24 pounds of fudge were sold. What percentage of the pounds of fudge were sold that weekend? So see what we're missing? If you look through this paragraph, you don't see a percent symbol anywhere. There's no percent symbol. So we don't know the percentage, and that's what it's saying. What percentage? That's what we don't know. So this time the percentage is going to be our variable. We don't know what percentage of the fudge was sold that weekend. So instead of writing, 29% like we did in the previous problem, we don't know the percent. So that's x. But recall that the 100 just always stays there. And now I need an is word and an of word. So if I were to rewrite this, what they're basically asking is 24 pounds of fudge is what percent of 32 pounds of fudge? I mean, that's basically what they're asking. So 24 is what percent, we don't know, of 32. And again, remember, there's more than one way to do this. If you can do it a different way that's legitimate and figure it out, that's just fine. Okay, so we're going to cross multiply, and we're going to get 32 times x equals 24 times 100. 32x equals 2400. Now, x is multiplied, that 32 is multiplied to the x. So the way that we can sort of get rid of it and get it to the other side is to do the opposite operation, which is division. And so my answer, x, is 2400 divided by 32, which is 75. What percentage of the pounds of fudge were sold that weekend? So they want to know what percentage. Okay, that's what we don't know. So my answer then is 75%. So they sold 24 pounds out of 32 pounds. They sold 75% of the fudge that they made. And again, make sure that makes sense to you. That's 3 parts out of 4, 24 out of 32. Sure, that fractional reduced to 3/4. So you could have just set this up as a fraction, changed it to a decimal, move the decimal point. Like you said, multiple ways to do it. Okay, on this page, let's try number 5. And this is the same idea, except this time we're going to have our information in different spots. Is over of equals percent over 100. A real estate agent earned a commission of $4,200 for selling a house. If his rate of commission is 3%, what was the selling price of the house? Okay, so this time they're saying, here's his commission, $4,200 is 3% of what larger number? Okay, 4,200, that's his commission. And his rate of commission is 3%. So 4,200 is 3%. I mean, how much did that house cost? Right? I mean, this is a lot of money in commission, and it's only 3%. So this house must have been expensive. And he made $4,200 for selling it. So again, I have the percent here, so 3 is going to go on the numerator of that fraction. The 100 stays. And then I just have to decide, where does the 4,200 go? Top or bottom? Is it an is word or an of word? 4,200 is 3% of what? So this time I don't know of what 4,200 is. Okay, and then we're just going to cross multiply. So 3 times x equals 4,200 times 100. Okay, so that is 420,000. 3 is multiplied to x, so to get rid of the 3, we divide both sides by 3. And we get 140,000. So make sure that's reasonable for the price of a house. The house sold for $140,000 and the real estate agent earned $4,200 for selling it. So that's 3% of this. You can figure out 10% in your head. Would just be move the decimal over 1 to 14. That would be $14,000, and 3% is less than half of that. So it makes sense that that's a reasonable amount. So $140,000 is how much the house sold for. Okay. Let's try a couple more out of this little set. It may look different. I wanted to do number 8. Number 8. Okay. Now mine didn't print off well. Yours should have multiplication here instead of boxes. It says I equals P times R times T. So I think yours probably looks like that. Mine just didn't print well. Okay, we've got this formula, so this is a different application. We're not going to use that same proportion. That's not the only way to do percent problems, and there's different types of things that involve percents. So Noah borrowed $1,200 for car repairs from the Fast Times Loan Company for 9 months at a simple interest rate of 24%. That is incredibly high interest rate. How much interest did Noah pay, and what was the total amount for him to pay off the loan? So he borrowed $1,200, and he only kept it for 9 months. Okay. Now, one thing you need to know about these interest problems is that time needs to go to years. So I'm going to put here convert to years. So 9 months is what part of a year? You could just say 9 months out of 12 months, because a year has 12 months, is 3/4 when that reduces. Okay, so that's 3/4 of a year. Or if you'd rather say, convert that to a decimal, 0.75. Okay, it's not a whole year yet, it's 3/4 of a year. But you do have to convert it to year terms in order, don't put 9 in for t, in other words. Okay, so let's look at this. We need the principal is the amount that he borrowed to begin with. So the principal is $1,200. The interest rate is that percent. Simple interest rate of 24%. So the rate is 24%. Now to put it in a problem like this, to use an interest formula, I need to go ahead and convert that to a decimal. And you remember when you do that, you move your decimal point 2 places to the left. Okay, when you're converting percents to decimals and decimals to percents, you're either multiplying by 100 or dividing by 100. So what that does is move the decimal point 2 places one way or the other. Okay, and my time we just figured out is 0.75, 3/4 of a year. Now once you've got that, that's the hard part. To plug it into the formula, you literally just multiply those 3 numbers together. So the hard part is figuring out what to do on the front end. So that's 1,200 times 0.24 times 0.75. Okay, and that is going to be $216. Okay, now let's make sure we answer the questions. How much interest did Noah pay? Okay, so how much interest? So Noah paid $216 in interest. So he borrowed $1,200 for only 9 months and had to pay back an extra $216, which leads us to the next question. What was the total amount to pay off the loan? So he already borrowed $1,200, and now he owes $216 in interest. So that is $1,416. So the total amount to pay off the loan will be $1,416 is needed to pay off the loan. Okay, how much is needed to pay off the loan? $1,416. He paid $216 in interest. So we had 2 questions there. Okay. So that's just a simple interest problem. Now let's do one of these. You can see here 11, 12, and 13 are basically the same as each other. So let's just pick one here. Do number 12. This has to do with changing the percents when you're talking about a new versus an old value, and we want to look at what's called percent change. I'll write that down. 11, 12, and 13 all have to do with percent change. So in February, Libby's electric bill was $220. In March, her bill was $176. What was the percent decrease in her bill from February to March? So obviously her bill went down from February to March. They're not even wanting to know by how much. They want to know what's that percent decrease. Round to the nearest whole number, it says. Now all you have to know is which one is the new amount and which one is the original amount. Okay, the new amount is the one that it's changed to. The original is what it sounds like. What was originally there first. So February is before March. So February was her original bill, $220, and in March, the new amount, it changed to $176. So I would say 176 minus 220, and it's always divided by the original amount. Okay, that's just the formula. So we have to plug things in. Now what's going to happen here is you're going to get a decimal, And so in order to get to a percent, we're going to need to move that decimal point. We're going to need to convert decimal to percent. So that's what multiplying by 100 does. Okay, so if you plug that in, 176 minus 220 is negative 44. And you may think that's wrong, but if it's a decrease, it says percent decrease. It went down, right? 220 down to 176. If it's a decrease, it will be negative. That's what that reflects. Okay, so in this scenario, if you get a negative number, it indicates there was a decrease. So I'm going to bring that up here. That's negative 0.2 times 100%. So just multiply that by 100. And that gives me negative 20%. So she had a 20% decrease in her bill between February and March. Okay, so instead of saying negative 20%, it says what was the percent decrease. So 20% decrease is a better way to say that. Okay, all I need to do is plug it in, the new minus the old over the old, or original, however you would rather say it. Okay. I think, yeah, that was it for these. So, oh wait, no, I wanted to do number 10 real quick. Let's do number 10. See how that's going. That's a different type of problem that we haven't done. Jenny's Diner at Stone Cold Grill cost $48.25. Well, if I could read, Jenny's Dinner, thank you, at Stone Cold Grill costs $48.25 after tax. How much should she add for a 20% tip? What was the total cost of her dinner, including the tip? So in something like this, you might want to use even a, you could use the is over of equals percent over 100 to get that amount. Okay, so what we're looking for is what is 20% of $48.25. Now, if you were in a restaurant, you would probably estimate that. You might estimate that at 49 or even 50, because 50 is easy to do in your head. And you could say, well, 20% of 50, I could do that. I could take 10% of 50, which would be $5, and double it for 20%. So my tip, if it were $50, would be $10. But it's not. It's a more exact figure here. So we need to figure this out. What number is, remember we have is over of equals percent over 100. So don't know what number is of 48.25, and this is 20% over 100. Cross multiply. 100x equals 48.25 times 20. It's 965. Divide both sides by 100. And you get $9.65. Remember the estimate. If we estimated this at 50, it was going to be $10 for the tip. So this is less than 50. That's less than 10. Makes sense. What was the total cost of her dinner? Okay, so the tip is $9.65. And then, of course, the total cost of her dinner will be the $48.25 plus the $9.65 plus, and that gives me $57.90. So the total cost of her dinner is $57.90. Okay, so those are some examples of some of the percent problems. Now what you'll be doing in your packet, in your CEI workbook, is you're going to look at, we already did pages, let's see, right before page 18 last week. So you're going to start with your workbook and you're going to do pages 18 through 21 in the CEI workbook. So 18 to 21, and I've done several of those for you already. The ones on page 18 are a little bit shorter, but they're the same idea. The is over of is percent over 100. And then just do 18 to 21, and that will be the rest of your percent practice. Okay, And then we will work on, like I said, integers, and we'll also work on some D2L things, my math lab things. But for now, if you can just work on this, and then we'll look at the next video here in a little bit.